Today, we're diving into an interesting aspect of communication. Really, it's about listening to others and then asking questions when something's not clear, you
Yeah,
know? It's all about ensuring that we truly understand what we're hearing.
right. So this approach, it emphasizes that listening isn't just absorbing sound, it's actively processing and then, if needed, asking clarifying questions.
Exactly. I mean, it's like you listen carefully and then you reflect a bit, think about what you heard, and if there's any fuzziness, you ask questions to clear it up. It's a
Yep.
layered process.
And it's interesting because it builds on the earlier steps of listening without interrupting and then just recalling instructions, right? So, here, there's an added twist, asking questions when something doesn't make sense.
Right, absolutely. One of the key building blocks here is knowing why it's important to understand what you just heard. So you basically check your understanding by, say, repeating back or rephrasing the
Mhm.
message. That way, any misunderstandings are nipped in the bud.
I like that. It really ensures that there's a constant dialogue going on, even if it's internal, to verify the message. But what are some techniques mentioned that can help us check our understanding?
Well, the content talks about a few methods. One is repeating what you think you heard, another is rephrasing it to capture the meaning, and yet another is drawing a link to similar previous experiences.
Right.
So you might ask something like, is that like when we handled that event last year? Kind of an analogy.
Yeah, those analogies work really well. And it also suggests basing your questions on the keywords who, what, where, when, and how. That really provides structure.
Exactly. It's like you're using a checklist in your mind. Who is involved? What's happening exactly? Where is it taking place? When is it occurring? How will it unfold? This framework guides you to ask targeted and purposeful questions.
Absolutely, yeah. It makes so much sense because if you ask irrelevant questions, it can not only waste time, but also signal that you weren't really paying attention.
True, the content warns against that. You know, questions that aren't connected to what was said can derail the conversation. It's all about making sure your questions are directly related and add value.
Hmm. But don't you think there's a risk of interrupting the flow if someone asks too many questions? Sometimes a conversation might lose its momentum.
I get that concern,
Hmm.
but the idea is not to bombard the speaker with questions, but to pause just long enough to confirm that you've got the right idea. It's a balance. Ask enough to clarify, but not so many that you disrupt the train of thought.
That's a good point. I also noticed that the material discusses using these methods in a classroom setting. It suggests that learners can, for example, get partial information and then have to ask the right set of questions to fill in the gaps.
Yes, exactly. It's a kind of interactive exercise. One learner gives some basic info, and the other, by asking who, what, where, when, and how, helps complete the picture. It's a practical way to
Right.
teach active listening.
And extending that idea, teachers can even assess students by checking how many relevant, thoughtful questions they ask when something isn't fully clear. That really bridges the gap between passive hearing and active understanding.
For sure, it's like building a mental map as you listen, confirming each point along the way. I mean, if you don't clarify what you aren't sure about, misunderstandings can creep up and even grow larger over time.
Yeah, exactly. I really appreciate that approach because it encourages us not to stay silent if something is fuzzy. But um, don't you think sometimes people might worry about asking questions for fear of appearing ignorant?
That's a fair challenge. It might seem a bit intimidating sometimes, but the point here is that asking good questions is a sign of engagement and critical thinking, not of inadequacy. It's about having the courage to say,
Hmm.
I need to know more.
I agree with that, though it does take practice to ensure the questions are thoughtful, steering clear of ones that are too superficial, right?
Exactly. It's quality over quantity. If you ask questions just for the sake of asking, or if they're off mark, it could stall the conversation. The content really encourages reflection first. Think about what you already understand before you ask for more details.
Right. It's almost like you're giving yourself a mini self-audit in real time. You review what you've heard, and then you decide if you need more info. That seems like a healthy way to communicate, be it in a classroom or even in everyday settings.
Oh, absolutely. And it even suggests that these reflective questions, like, why is it important to check understanding? Or, how do I know I've really got it? Are crucial for deepening that clarity.
Absolutely, yeah. It's kind of like tuning an instrument. You check and recheck until it's perfectly in tune. Once it's tuned, the music, or in this case, the conversation, flows much better.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. And not only does this apply to spoken communication, but it can also be a valuable literacy strategy. You can see how it might help in explaining complex topics or even historical
Hmm.
events.
Right. And I think one of the most practical tips is that these strategies can be incorporated into everyday learning environments, not only to enhance clarity, but also to build confidence in asking for what's needed.
Yup, that's the beauty of it. It gives learners a sort of toolkit, repetition, rephrasing, linking new with known that enhances overall comprehension. And teachers get to see who's grasping the material and who might
Right.
need a little extra help.
And while it's great in theory, I do worry sometimes that without proper moderation, these strategies might overwhelm a conversation if misused. What do you think about that?
I think that's a valid concern. It really comes down to balance and situational awareness. In a casual conversation, you might not need a full checklist, but in a detailed or technical discussion, these methods ensure nothing vital is overlooked.
Hmm. That makes sense. So, overall, the content is really pushing for an engaged, mindful process of listening, one that actively prevents miscommunication by encouraging us to ask just the right questions.
Exactly. It's like building bridges between minds. And when both parties are working to ensure clarity, the conversation not only flows better, but it also builds stronger understanding and relationships.
Yep, definitely a valuable insight. Thanks for walking through that with me. I feel like I've got a firmer grip on why asking the right questions matters.
Anytime. Remember, whether in a classroom or in everyday talk, actively checking your understanding can prevent a lot of confusion. It's all about engagement and clear, effective communication.
Right. And that's a solid takeaway, using thoughtful questions to enhance our listening. I'll definitely try to use these techniques next time I'm involved in a discussion.
Absolutely. Keep those questions coming, but just enough to sharpen the clarity, not enough to cloud the conversation. Thanks for a great discussion today.
Thanks. And I'm looking forward to our next chat on these essential communication strategies.